meet friends, learn about the North Carolina legislature, learn about what issues are important to North Carolina Audubon, and attending the training session does not commit you to doing anything on the actual advocacy days, so you can just come and learn and have fun. And the only question I would ask or request I would make is come thirsty, because Vaulted Oak Brewing has been very gracious in offering us the space. So we'd love for you to come join us and buy some beer. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Alicia. As always, we have some field trips coming up. See, this week, there's a trip to the Outer Banks that's full. Next Tuesday, I'm leading a walk at Latta Latta Prairie. And the following weekend and all through February, we have a variety of walks. Just a reminder that if you'd like to go on a walk, please contact the leader of the walk and make sure they confirm that you're on the walk. And if you are unable to go and you've signed up, please let the leader know, because there's often a waiting list for walks. What else do we have?
Next month.
Next month.
It's the
Next month is going to be a different kind of meeting. We have prints from the winners of the National Audubon Photo Contest. And we have those prints in our custody for several weeks. And it's going to open at Wing Haven Friday, February 24th and Saturday, February 25th. And then our next membership meeting is March 2nd, and the pictures will be here in this room. And we also have a photographer. Can we go back one slide to the next meeting thing? We also have a professional photographer, Frank Vasto, who will speak, and several of our members that have photographic gear have agreed to bring that, so you can actually touch some cameras. And if you're interested in starting this, you get a chance to see several things. Okay, what else should we talk about? Oh, our program tonight. Have the title slide there. Tonight we have Alicia Bachman, and Alicia is going to talk about the NC Bird Atlas. And some of you have been submitting eBird lists to the North Carolina Bird Atlas, and Alicia is going to tell us all about it. Alicia is a graduate of Guilford College in English and a graduate of, Beyond College in English, Guilford College in biology, and she is working for the NC Bird Atlas. So let's welcome Alicia.
Sure.
What is this eventually?
You're good. Here we go. Yeah, so my name is Alicia Bachman. I am currently working for the North Carolina Bird Atlas. I'm working with the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission, who is spearheading this Atlas effort. We also have CeCe King online joining us virtually. She is the regional director for the Piedmont for the North Carolina Bird Atlas. And so we are here to help you and to encourage you to volunteer with us, because this effort, this project is not possible without our volunteers. Progress. Should just be able to push the next arrow. For the so some of you are probably already submitting checklists, already participating in the Bird Atlas, but I imagine there are a number of you that are not really familiar with the Bird Atlas. So we're just going to start with the basics of what is an atlas. An atlas is a systematic, volunteer-based statewide bird survey. So it's really just a systematic way of kind of looking at the bird population within North Carolina And North Carolina is a bit unique in that our atlas is all year. A lot of states, when they do a bird atlas, they're just looking at the breeding season. But North Carolina, our atlas, we want to know who's here all year round, who's here in the summer, who's here in the winter, who calls North Carolina home. Next button. And it ties in with a lot of our efforts that we already have going in North Carolina. So there are a lot of volunteer-based studies, a lot of volunteer data that has contributed to our knowledge base of bird populations in North Carolina. Some of these you may be familiar with, like the USGS breeding bird survey. So there are a number of routes where people run breeding bird surveys. They stop at systematic checkpoints along roadways and do 3-minute point counts, which are systematic surveys that people do at specific locations. And so if there are any of you here that do breeding bird surveys, feel free to get in contact with us about how you can use that data to contribute to the bird atlas and how we can partner together and make your data collection count doubly. That goes, that's also true for the Christmas bird count and some upcoming spring bird counts that we have. A lot of those count circles, if you're familiar with Christmas bird counts, it's a large circle. And then there are teams that split up and cover the area within that circle. And so we can actually take that data and upload it to the North Carolina Bird Atlas, and again, make our data collection work double. And eBird in general is another citizen science effort. So it's something that many of you probably use eBird already. And that is how we collect our data. So it's a citizen science project. You're contributing to eBird, but you're also getting the benefits of eBird, which helps you track your bird lists, helps you know where to find birds. And it's just a really great all-around resource for birders. Going along with what is an atlas is something that a lot of states have done. Those states in white are the states that have not completed a breeding bird atlas. There may be some regions within that state that have complete atlases. So Mecklenburg actually has completed a bird atlas, but the state of North Carolina has not. And as you can see, we are the only state in the east of the Mississippi who has not completed a breeding bird atlas. There are some states that are have just finished or are working on their first atlas. There are a number of states that are working on their second atlas. And then we have New York and Maryland showing us up working on their third atlas. Although I do think theirs are just breeding bird atlases. But up until now, we haven't really been, it's a lot of resources to do a 5-year project. The atlas spans 5 years. And so we've kind of sort of looked at our cost benefit analysis, and we've decided that with the climate and the recently released reports on the state of birds, that an atlas really is beneficial to our knowledge of populations in the state. North Carolina is a great place to do an atlas. We have a lot of diverse habitats, a lot of diverse ecoregions. So we span from the mountains to the coast. We've got, the Piedmont grasslands. We have hardwood forests. We have pine forests. We have wetlands. We have sand hills. Many, many different habitats. And because of the diversity of habitats within the state, North Carolina has recorded over 470 bird species within the state. So we have over observations of over 470 species. And so that's a lot of species and a lot of need for research and for resources. And really there is a need for data that is greater than the available resources. So manpower, funding, so we really kind of have to look at where do we need to pool our resources. And in 2015, North Carolina did do a comprehensive wildlife action plan that identified 78 species with significant knowledge gaps. So we looked at what do we already know and what do we need to know. And we identified 78 species that really need a lot of those gaps in data filled in. And so we put a lot of effort into a handful of those species, such as golden wing warbler, peregrine falcon, American black duck, and it really did take a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of time to do that. So the atlas is going to help us fill in a lot of those gaps for a larger number of species. And a lot of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the 2019 State of the Birds report that came out. It garnered a lot of attention, was sort of a headline grabber. and showed us, it was a publication that showed that we have lost almost 3 billion birds since 1970. So in the last 50 years, we've lost almost 1 in 4 birds for a number of reasons. And so we really want to kind of establish some baseline data. Where are our bird populations now? What is declining? What is increasing? And if you go to the next slide, so we can look at, we have a number of species that we have a lot of data on. So for instance, wood thrush, they are using things like that those breeding bird survey routes. We have a lot of data on wood thrush, and we have a pretty good idea of the decline of that species. But then if we look at a species like yellow-billed cuckoo, which has similar niche, similar habitat requirements, we don't know much about them. We have a pretty good idea that they are declining as a species, but we really don't know. And we really need more data to look at, is this a species that we should be focusing on? And what are the habitat requirements? How does it differ from other species? And so something we can think about as we look ahead is, of course, climate. So climate change is going to affect bird range, bird habitat, the needs of birds. And Audubon actually has a really great tool on their website where you can plug in a species and you can look at the season and you can look at, the warming trends. So it's staying current. If we increase by 1.5 degrees, if we increase by 3 degrees, how is that going to affect the range and the populations of a specific species? And some of those species accounts are pretty jarring, how many we're going to lose and how much habitat they're going to lose. So for North Carolina, again, mentioned that bird diversity, we are actually number 10 in the nation in species diversity. So we are a very birdy state. There are lots of birds out there. Unfortunately, we are number 32 in number of birders per capita. So we have a lot of birds, but we don't have a lot of people going out and looking for those birds and, or recording those birds, recording those observations when they do see birds. We are also number 18 in observers per square mile. So our actual density of birders is not nearly as high as our diversity of birds. So what we decided to do, and what most atlases have done, is partner with eBird. eBird is pretty well known for being the most popular app, the most popular database for bird submissions, bird observation submissions. It's what most people use. It works for science and it works for you. So it's a very convenient way to pool all of that data. Worldwide, eBird has over 825,000 users that have submitted over 73 million checklists and observed over 10,000 species of bird. So eBird, like I said, works for everyone. It helps you find more birds. It helps you explore sightings. If there's a species you're looking for that you're interested in, you can research species maps. You can look at local sightings. You can even have eBird alert you when that bird is reported in your county. It's something that you want to see in Mecklenburg County this spring if you haven't yet seen a wood thrush. If you go into eBird and click county alerts, it'll tell you when birds that you haven't seen locally are popping up. You can also have it tell you when rare birds pop up if you like to chase bird species. It's also a great way to keep track of those bird lists. What have you seen? What do you need to see? What would you like to see? It's a really good place to pull photos and audio recordings, a place to store that so you don't have to keep that on your phone at all times. And doing all of that, using it for those purposes, also contributes to science and conservation. And so with a few tweaks if you're already using eBird, with a few tweaks of your habits, your birding habits, you can really make birding work and help us out with the atlas as well. So if we take a look at checklists that were submitted in North Carolina, so this is 2019. This is a couple of years before the atlas got started. This is just people using eBird as they normally would in their everyday life. This is the number of checklists submitted. So we had over 120 hours of birding logged in North Carolina. So that's a pretty significant amount of effort if we're looking at that in terms of data. But what you might notice if you look at those red circles is a lot of that data is concentrated in those urban centers. So we've of course got Charlotte down here. We've got that's probably Asheville, Greensboro, Winston, Raleigh, down near Wilmington. course, the Outer Banks is a solid line. That's where everyone goes to bird, hence your full trip that you guys have coming up. And then, of course, you can kind of see those highways too. People tend to bird along highways and byways. So again, this is 2022. These are just the eBird submissions that were not submitted to the Atlas portal. So we see the same trends, those concentrations of population centers, those roadways that are really, sort of populated with checklists, but those same rural areas that aren't getting covered. So if you look at that northeast corner of North Carolina, there are birds there. There just aren't birders there. There's no one going out and recording those observations. So we needed to find a way to have a more systematic, standardized survey of the state. So if we overlay that with the checklists that were submitted to the Atlas portal in 2022, you can really see how we're starting to get a little bit more of an even coverage of the state. And you can even see where we have, which I'll go over in a minute, we have priority blocks, places where people are focusing that help us distribute that effort over a more even area. You're still going to have concentrations in those urban centers. You're still going to have folks who tend to stay close to home. And that's fine. That's all great usable data. But we're starting to reach out into some of those more rural areas where people otherwise might not bird. Some of those roadside stops, some of those places where it's just a bunch of country roads and it's not really a destination, not somewhere where you would normally get out of your car and do a checklist, but you're in a priority block. So now you're going to stop and do a checklist and actively look for those birds. Is it frozen? Oh, perfect. So you may be wondering, how exactly do you Atlas? How do you contribute to this project? And how do you maybe tweak some of your birding habits if you're already using eBird? So the first one, the most important one, go ahead and click, is to use the Atlas portal. How many people here use eBird already, have the app downloaded on your phone? And how many of you are already in the Atlas portal? Okay, so there's a handful of you that already have eBird. Those of you that don't, signing up for eBird is really easy. It's a website that is maintained by Cornell University. They are one of the premier universities labs for studying avian ecology. They have a lot of avian studies. And so they host eBird, they host Merlin. A lot of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Merlin. If you're not, it's a fantastic app to download. It has a free field guide. It has AI that is getting better by the day, where you can upload photos that will help you identify birds. You can have a sound recording running and it'll tell you what it hears, which is pretty accurate, but always take it at face value and confirm that that's what you're hearing. It's a jumping off point. It's an amazing learning tool. So that's part of Cornell's suite of products. And as is Birds of the World, which is a really great resource that I'll talk about in a little bit. So to use the Atlas portal, if you have eBird, once you sign up for the account on Cornell's website, you'll download the eBird app, and this will be your home screen. This is what it looks like on an iPhone. It's almost the same with Android, except this little menu option is up at the top on Android. It's those three little lines. Either way, you'll click on whichever menu option you have. You will go to settings, your settings button, and you'll see it pop up where down, it's kind of blocked by that, but where that little red line says eBird, that actually says, so portal, you want to look for the North Carolina Bird Atlas portal. So you're going to click on where it says eBird, because you're automatically in the eBird portal. You're automatically submitting checklists to eBird. But in addition to submitting them to eBird, we would like you to submit them to the North Carolina Bird Atlas as well. So you're still submitting to eBird, but you're also submitting to us. So you're going to scroll down. It's alphabetical, so it's really easy to find. Go down to N. Click on that North Carolina Bird Atlas. And as soon as you do, now all of your checklists are going to come to that Atlas portal. It's the reason that's a couple reasons why it's important to be in that Atlas portal. One is it just kind of makes it easier. It's a way to kind of pull that data and make it a little more convenient to find. Two, when you are out atlasing, so when you're birding with the intent to contribute to the atlas, once you, I'll show an example of how to start a checklist in a bit, but once you click this checklist button, you're going to leave it on record track, and it's going to sort of follow you and record where you are, and it's going to tell you when you get close to the end of an atlas block. Pretty aggressively, actually. Mine vibrates. Sometimes I forget that it's on and it vibrates. And what's the problem? And it's just because I'm approaching at the edge of an atlas block. So it helps with that. And then it also helps if you are submitting your data to the Atlas portal. Twice a year, we get an account of all of the hours that were submitted to the Atlas portal. And then we can use those hours. We can, we'll send you an email twice a year for you to open up and donate your hours to us. So you've already donated your time. And then if you click to donate those hours, no money involved, just your hours, it also helps us fund the project. So we can do a little bit more, and we can do some more data analysis. We can pay folks like myself. So it just helps us sort of fund the project overall by donating those hours that you've already contributed. So it's just really just clicking a button.
How do I do that?
To donate the hours. So once you're in the Atlas portal, we send emails out twice a year. So we have your email once you opt into the Atlas portal, and it'll be an auto-generated email that you'll just click that button to donate the hours. Yeah. So the next is visiting priority blocks. So we talked about those blocks. If you want to go to the next slide, yeah. So we have priority blocks. There are 937 priority blocks throughout the state. They are the southeast corner of a USGS survey block. That doesn't really mean much to you, but basically they are about 10 square meter blocks that are sort of randomly selected, organized across the state. You'll see a couple holes along the east. Those are going to be where the military bases are. They're restricted access. So we have Department of Defense doing our surveys there. But all of the other blocks are available for adoption. And we are encouraging folks to adopt blocks. I will say, going back, that anyone can atlas in any block at any time. You don't have to be a block adopter. And if you adopt a block, you don't have to only atlas in your block. The purpose of a block adopter is to help us ensure that that block is complete, which in just a second, I'll talk about on the next slide what that means. But you are just really sort of helping us by either going out and focusing your birding in that particular priority block, or encouraging folks kind of keeping an eye on what needs to be done to make sure that that block is complete. Because for us to complete this Atlas project, we need to have all of our blocks, which, if you go to the next slide, I'll explain what that means. One more click, sorry. So what does it mean to complete a priority block? So each one of those red blocks, what we are looking for during the breeding season is to have 20 hours of survey effort. So that's each little checklist you do contributes to that survey effort. So whether it's a 3-minute checklist or a 30-minute checklist, it all contributes to that effort, and it adds up to that 20 hours of survey time, and that's daytime surveying. We are asking for a few checklists that are nocturnal visits. Nocturnal visits are checklists that are either 40 minutes before sunrise or 20 minutes after sunset. And the purpose of those are to look for things like owls, night jars, so your whippoorwills, your Chuck-will's widow, your nighthawks, and American woodcock is another really common thing. So this time of year, we have owls that are starting to exhibit breeding behaviors. We have owls that are doing some courtship display, duetting. We have American woodcocks that are displaying. If you've never seen a woodcock display, find a priority block that has some woodcock habitat and go out and do a nocturnal checklist about 30 minutes after sunset. Look for some woodcock, listen, familiarize yourself with their call. It's a really cool display. It's a really cool phenomenon and something that no one ever regrets seeing. So we're looking for those birds that typically display and have behaviors that happen in that sort of dawn and dusk time. Of course, safety first, go with a buddy, go places you're comfortable with, because these are, sort of more dawn, dusk, or nighttime hours. And we do encourage playback during that time. We don't during the day, but we do at night. Benefit to nocturnal birding. I'm not, some people don't like birding at night, but the benefit to it is if you are just getting started as a birder, there's only about 10 species that you need to learn. So it's a really great way to kind of feel confident about your birding skills. You listen to a few calls, you play back, and if someone answers, you've identified a bird. So it's a really great way to kind of get into birding and really build your confidence in those, in doing some of that birding. We are also looking for, this is true of both breeding and winter, we are looking at all accessible habitats within a block are surveyed. So if you have a block that has a nice little green open space park with sort of a nice grass lawn, there's maybe a river or a stream running through it, you have some riparian corridor, you have a development where some backyard habitat, you have a little pine savanna, you maybe have, excuse me, some second growth forest. You're trying to, if possible, access all of that habitat and look for all of the birds that might be likely to be in that block. So we're trying to get the observations of those birds. And once we get all those observations during the breeding season, to complete that block, we need to get 50% of those birds confirmed as breeders, which I will talk in a little bit about what breeding behavior, how we code and confirm breeding behavior. But we need 50% of those confirmed. During the wintering season, which is from November till the end of February, so we are currently in the winter season, the requirements are a little less because we're not out looking for breeding behaviors. We are simply looking for the species account, so observations. And so we are looking for 10 hours of survey time. And these time parameters are really over the course of the full 5 years of the project. They don't have to be done in one single year. So it's cumulative over the 5 years of the project. Excuse me. And we do still need some nocturnal visits for the winter and all of the habitats surveyed, but we don't have to code those breeding behaviors. Like I said, owls are currently duetting, are currently exhibiting breeding behavior. So, if you see breeding behavior, a couple weeks ago, I was down in the Uaris and I saw some bald eagles that were doing their cartwheel display. So I marked them as having courtship behavior. So that was a probable breeding behavior. So I did go ahead and mark that, even though technically we're in the winter season, but we don't need that confirmation or those breeding behaviors to complete the winter portion of the block. So when you go to ncbirdatlas.org, you're going to have resources for the bird atlas. And one of those, there's a link of Atlas Essentials. And one of those is your block sign up, your block map. And when you click on that, this is going to pop up. It's an interactive geospatial map. And so this acknowledgement will pop up. One thing that's not on here is currently there is a link that you can download these so that you can use this offline. Don't know if any of you use Google Earth or Avenza. I can't say enough about Avenza. If you lose service, you can still find your way around if you have a map downloaded. It's much easier than using an online map. So you can download those. We can talk about that later if you want to talk to me about it after the program. So you will click and accept the terms, and then you will go to the block map. And this is what you will see. So each one of these squares are those priority blocks. And if the block is outlined in red, that means that the block has already been adopted. If it's outlined in blue, it's looking to be adopted. So there's plenty still available. So we don't have to, don't fight over the same block when you immediately leave here to go adopt a block tonight. There's plenty out there and available for you to adopt, including quite a few in the Charlotte area. So we are looking to try and get all those blocks adopted just because it helps us stay accountable within each individual block. So once you zoom in, you find a block that you really like. This is, near Jordan Lake. So this is up closer to Durham, Raleigh, in Wake County. But let's say, you have your second home in Wake County and you want to bird up by there. So you're going to click on the block that interests you, and you'll see it'll say available, and it'll have a link for you to go to sign up. And you'll sign up and you'll become that block adopter. So this is what it looks like, excuse me, when you download it for, it's going to be I think it's a KMZ file. which is what you can upload into either Google Earth or Avenza. And it's basically an interactive PDF map. So it plots you on that map. You can zoom in, you can see the different layers within that map without having to be online. This is what it looks at the street level. If you click the next one, that's what it looks like if you download the satellite view. Satellite view is extremely helpful in kind of planning where you want to go in this block. So what I typically do, excuse me, if that's my priority block, I kind of look at the general overview of what it looks like. So I see there's some green space in the northwest corner, there's a lake in the northeast corner, there's some neighborhoods, there's what looks like maybe a park or a golf course in the center. And then I kind of look at my road access and look at what I might be able to access. And I create a general plan of where I want to go in that block, where it looks like I might safely be able to pull over, or where there might be a trail, some public access points. And that's kind of my starting space. With gas the way it is, I don't want to just randomly drive around this block and hope that I find somewhere to bird. That does happen once I plot my spaces on there, places that I see that I might want to go. As I'm driving, I might see something that I couldn't tell from that satellite map, and I'll pull over and bird. What we are looking for are complete checklists. So if you do see a spot, pull over, and even if it's just for 3 minutes, even doing a checklist for 3 minutes is a complete checklist and is much better data than doing an incidental. You know, if you're driving through and you see a Ross's goose mixed in with some Canada geese, go ahead and hop out of your car and get that Ross's goose on your life list, but also count those Canada geese and, you know, mark that there was maybe a pair of cardinals in the area and an agitated Carolina wren was yelling at you while you were doing that. In about 3 minutes, you can get, you know, I've gotten 10, 15 species in 3 to 5 minutes on a checklist. So it's pretty easy to do a complete checklist and get a much better picture of what's actually in that area. I am jumping ahead a little bit, so you can click to the next. These are a couple extremes of what we see in North Carolina, again, with that diversity of habitat. There are some blocks you're going to zoom in on, and it's going to look like this. It's going to have 2 roads that you can access, and the rest is going to be either public land or a big swath of blocks of private land. So don't be discouraged when you see that. If it's public land and you're up for, you know, a nice long hike and you want to tackle this block, by all means, go for it. But most of the blocks are going to look a bit more like that previous block and are much more accessible and easy to kind of plot out and access. The other extreme, go to the next slide, is going to be our more urban blocks, where it's going to be mostly roads, and somewhere that this is Southeast Greensboro. I can guarantee you there are very few people that I live in Greensboro, and I don't think I've ever birded in this part of Greensboro. It's not a destination, but when you look at it as a priority block, I can look at it and I can see there's a municipal park in the northeast corner and northwest corner. There's a park up towards with a little pond towards the northeast corner. There's some water in the middle that looks like maybe there's some industry or shopping center there that maybe I can, you know, look and see what's living on that pond. There's a couple little parks that pop up in the center there. There's some maybe like a power line buffer with some grassland sort of shrub scrub habitat. There might be, you know, even looking at some of those industrial buildings or those shopping centers, you're going to see, you know, you can see things like barn swallows breed there. There's some really cool things that you can find in a parking lot. So don't be daunted by this either. So the next part of atlasing, once you are in the portal and once you've decided where you want to go, the next is to make sure that you are doing a number of smaller checklists within that block. So go to the next slide. So you are selecting your actual location. A lot of folks who use eBird, the tendency is to use the closest hotspot to your location because it aggregates, it pulls all of the information into one location, which can be helpful in some ways, but for this particular project, we really want to know the more specific aspects of each habitat. And so it helps us if you're selecting your actual location. So when you, at the end of your checklist, it'll ask you, where were you, to select a location. And you're going to want to click on exactly where you started that checklist, not the closest hotspot to you. And we are also looking for those checklists to be under a mile, because we do want those separate habitats. If you're going over a mile, you're likely crossing multiple habitats. We have a much better picture and much more confidence in the checklist being in one specific habitat if your checklist is less than a mile long and less than an hour long. Anytime you cross into a new habitat, a distinct habitat, stop the checklist you're working on, start a new one. And then also, again, like I mentioned before, submitting complete checklists. That sounds like a lot, and some people don't like doing a lot of small little checklists. But I can offer one incentive for you that I actually just learned about recently. eBird, Cornell, I mentioned earlier, one of their suite of bird resource products is Birds of the World. I recently learned that if you submit within a calendar year in eBird 1,000 complete checklists, which 1,000, that sounds like a huge number. It's an average of about 3 a day, which really is fairly manageable. You know, even if you're 2 of those checklists are your morning and evening feeder checklists. And then one is while you're out driving and you realize you're in a priority block and you stop and do a 10-minute checklist in that priority block. You've got your 3 checklists for the day. If at the end of the year, you have done your 1,000 checklists, that following year, you get a free subscription to Birds of the World. Birds of the World currently, I think, is about $50 for a year subscription. And it has all of the information you could accounts at things that have been published about birds. It's basically, you know, for those of us who are old enough to remember the Encyclopedia Britannica, it's that entire volume just on birds on your phone. Access at your fingertips, any question you might have about a bird. It's really amazing, and it's you can go down some rabbit holes learning a lot of things you never knew that you wanted to know about birds. So it's a nice little incentive to get a few extra checklists in. So entering data, this is just a really quick example of why it's important to enter separate checklists for individually where you are. So I know near Charlotte, there is the McAlpine Creek Park is a hotspot. I see that pop up occasionally on eBird. That is just outside one of our priority blocks. But part of that creek corridor comes into the block. And then there's also another hotspot at James Boyce Park. So you have sort of at the ends of that little corridor, that creek corridor, you have 2 hotspots. And so most people who bird in this area are going to pool their checklists into one of these 2 hotspots. But if you look at the satellite map, you can see James Boyce Park is more of a municipal park. It's going to have some buildings, it's going to have edge habitat, and the McAlpine Creek is out of the block. So if you put your checklist in one of those 2 hotspots, it's not letting us know exactly what habitat you were in, where you were. If you are here inside the block, but you put your checklist here, that's now data that is not as valuable. So it's really important that you're putting those checklists exactly where you are. So the last thing, which is really important during the breeding season that I mentioned, is to record the breeding bird behaviors, record breeding behaviors when you observe them. So on eBird, this looks like nothing to those of you who haven't used eBird or don't know about breeding bird behaviors, but there are 4 categories of breeding behavior. The first is just observed. So that includes anything you put in eBird that doesn't have a coded behavior. And then it includes flyover, which basically means a bird that's beelining over your habitat. It's not interacting in any way. So things like gray blue, if you're in a backyard near no water and you see a gray blue heron fly over, it's not, even if it's carrying nesting material or carrying a fish, it's not breeding in that area. It's blowing right by you. So you can mark that as a flyover. On the other hand, if you have a hawk that's fairly high, but it's clearly hunting, that's not a flyover. It's not a breeding behavior, but it is interacting with your habitat. The 2 possible categories are a singing bird. So, you know, birds can sing anywhere. They do sing more during the breeding season, but, you know, we have the yellow-rumped warblers who don't breed here, but they're going to start to sing before they leave. So they are, you know, we don't typically code them, but if you do code them, it's just a possible. Same thing with birds that are in the appropriate habitat. So if you are walking along a stream and you see a prothonotary warbler, you're in the right habitat for that bird to be breeding, but it's not doing anything else. So it's just in the right habitat. We don't know if it's actually breeding there. And then we have a suite of probable. So these are behaviors that mean that it's very likely that that bird is breeding, but we can't say for certain. So things like S7 and M are birds that are multiple birds of the same species singing in a small area, or the same bird singing for more than 7 days. We have things like territorial behavior, that courtship or copulation. We have things like B, which is nest building for wrens and woodpeckers. So they are two types of birds that build multiple nests and aren't necessary. So it's a male who will start a nest trying to attract a female. So they're not necessarily breeding in that area. I don't know if if anybody has nest boxes in their backyard and you've had a house wren come, they will take over that nest box and shove a bunch of sticks in there. And a lot of times that doesn't mean that it's going to turn into a nest. It's just that male saying, hey, look what I can build. You should come make your nest here. So it's just observing that possible behavior. He's trying to breed, but they may not be actively breeding there. Then we get into these darker purple codes, and these are things that you see that mean that bird is breeding in your habitat. So things like carrying nesting material and nest building for those birds that are only going to build one nest. So things like robins, thrashers, bluebirds. Anytime you see any actual nest building happening, that bird is breeding there. Distraction displays, so the broken wing display that a killdeer does, where it's clearly trying to pull you away from young. And then the obvious ones, like a bird that's sitting on a nest incubating eggs, or is carrying food to the nest or feeding its young. If you find a nest that has eggs or young in it. So there's a link on the eBird website that explains these in detail and how to use these codes. So lastly, I just want to say thank you to all of our partners. This, as I mentioned before, this project would not be possible without multiple partnerships. So this is the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission who is spearheading this project. But we are also working with folks from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, from local colleges and universities, North Carolina Audubon. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Curtis Smalling. He's probably come to give talks to your club. And the U.S. Geological Survey is really helping us with a lot of that data analysis. So this is a project that really is a lot about partnerships. And of course, our regional coordinators. Is Ellen here? No, okay, so Ellen Wisner is your regional coordinator. You are Region 6. So we have split the state up into 6 regions that encompass about 11 counties each. And our regional coordinator is a volunteer who sort of helps us get you the resources that you need to atlas, to adopt a block, and to be successfully completing blocks. So Ellen is sort of the first person that you would reach out to if you have any questions or needs or concerns. And you can find her information on our under the eBird Atlas website, the Atlas team. And you can reach out to her and she can help. She can either help you or she can come to us to help you get what you need. So huge thanks to all of our regional coordinators. If you guys have friends north of here in that Region 5, we do have a vacancy. Send them my way if you know of anyone. And yeah, so that's our website and that's our overall coordinator email if you guys have some larger questions, things that need answered. So we'll start with the in-house folks. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
So I'm doing Project Peterwatt.
Mm-hmm.
That information go into the atlas.
If you are entering it into eBird, it will, preferably if you are in that North Carolina Bird Atlas portal. If you are in that North Carolina Bird Atlas portal, your data is still going to go to that overall Cornell project, but it's also going to come to us as well.
Because it's an app.
Yeah.
You know, you just put it in an app. And
gotcha. I'm actually not familiar. I should probably look into more how it works. I'm not that familiar.
Going in there, it should be.
Yeah, Project Peter Watch is a Cornell project,
Right.
so I imagine it's somehow aggregated. I just don't know if it goes into the portal or not. I'm not. Cece may know the answer to that.
Piedmont data that's not processed.
It doesn't.
They don't show.
It's a 2-day survey. So
Yeah, it's a 2-day
Oh,
survey.
because it's too long.
I think you could break your.
Like
your watch
CBC.
into- You could break it up, but
Oh,
you would have to keep 2 lists.
yeah,
because-
I keep 2 different things.
Yeah, you could definitely put the information into eBird, into the Atlas portal. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not that familiar with Feeder Watch and how that information gets uploaded. Yeah.
For that past couple months, my eBird app hasn't been able to locate. After I've done a list, and I tried to select location.
Yeah, I'm actually having the same issue, and I have that issue about once a year. And what I have to do is take any saved checklists I have, enter them in on my computer, and then delete the app and re-download it. It's really annoying, and I don't know why. Do you have Android? Yeah, I don't know if it's an Android thing. It happened to me for the first time 2 years ago. Or no, about a year and a half ago, and I had just come back from the lower Rio Grande Valley. I had checklists that I hadn't submitted because I was offline, and I didn't realize when I deleted them that they were going to disappear. They weren't saved. So I didn't back them up, and I learned the hard way. So make sure if you have any checklists that have not been submitted, that you can go into the eBird on the website, and you can, if you can figure out where you were to put in that location manually. It's kind of what mine does is it shows me when I click on the map, it shows me generally where I was, just not the exact point. So I can usually figure out where my checklist goes, and I have to manually enter them, which is incredibly annoying. But once you delete the app and uninstall and reinstall the app, it should fix the problem. Yeah, the eBird, so if you have submitted them, if you haven't submitted them, so when you put things in the eBird app, it just holds them there as kind of a placeholder until you submit them. So if you haven't, if you can't choose your location, you can't submit the checklist. And so it's just sitting in the app. You have to actually manually enter those into eBird. But you can go to my eBird online, and it'll tell you what has and hasn't been uploaded. We can take a look after the meeting, and I can see maybe if I can kind of help you out on that.
But I did try to update the app.
Yeah, I did update, and I tried to restart my phone. I tried all the basic things, and then I realized you actually have to uninstall and reinstall the app, and it's kind of annoying. And I'm going through that right now. I have a lot of Atlas checklists that it started doing it to me in the middle of a round of atlasing, but I had to continue doing it. So I just had to write down my coordinates so it was easier. It was a whole process, but yeah, we can take a look at it after the meeting.
I'm keeping paper right now. I'm keeping paper.
Mhm.
Then I submit it. How would I share that?
So you just want to, you can go back and do it retroactively, I believe, but you just want to make sure that you are submitting checklists in that Atlas portal. And you can do that. The way I showed the screen online was on a phone, but you can go into settings on the website as well and change your Atlas portal also. You just want to make sure that it's going to the Atlas portal.
What I'm doing with paper. I'm not writing that same.
Yeah, and this time of year is not as important. So I don't know. I don't remember how long you said it was.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can. Yeah. Awesome. That's very cool. Yeah. So you can kind of jot those down when you're seeing it and add it in on the website next time you do go out, and just kind of keep an eye out for that breeding behavior. But it is much easier once you get that access back to that app to just, click on the species account, and it opens up all those options and just tap it and go. Anyone else have questions? Were there any questions online?
No questions in the chat. Thanks.
What did she say?
No questions in the chat.
Okay. Yeah.
About donating your hours.
Yeah.
That doesn't automatically happen when you submit a list.
It doesn't. It's the way that the grant works is you have to actually donate those hours. You have to tell us that you want to donate those hours. The cool thing is, and keep an eye kind of on junk mail folders if you don't, regularly get emails from Scott, who is one of our Atlas coordinators. He works on the Atlas with us, kind of heading a lot of things up, working on that steering committee. And so there are a lot of resources. If you go to our homepage, which is ncbirdatlas.org, there's a lot of resources, and one of which is you can sign up to receive our newsletter, which is called the Quackalaki. We send out a newsletter which has a lot of atlasing tips, a lot of cool little things to kind of keep an eye on, things to have handy in your mind when you're out atlasing, things that are coming up seasonally. So having some of those tips there, and I believe they will send out a little notification to, hey, look out for this email so that you can donate the hours. And all you have to do is open that email and just click the I'd like to donate my hours button. It'll pop up a window actually that you can, so it's gonna automatically have all the hours that you generated as checklists, all the minutes that you generated as checklists, aggregated into one large lump sum number. And then there's also a comment box where you can donate hours that, you know, if you decide you want to go up to that northeast corner and make the drive up there and knock out some checklists for us, in some of those underverted blocks, you can donate the time you spent driving there as well. So any effort that you put into atlasing that doesn't show up on your checklists, you can donate that time to us as well and make a little note about that. Any other questions?
Alicia,
Yes.
I just want to make sure I answered correctly. Megan was asking about leaving the state and logging hours outside the state. And I said best practice is to turn off, to leave the portal when you leave the state and then turn the portal back on when you return. But if you want to add to that, anything?
Yeah, so the question, I don't know if you guys in the back could hear, was if you leave the state, what with that Atlas portal turned on, what happens? Ideally, if you are confident in your memory, which I am not, but if you are confident in your memory when you come back in the state that you're going to turn that Atlas portal on, feel free to exit the portal, go back to the general eBird portal, and then come back into the North Carolina portal when you come back to the state. But if you aren't confident that you're going to remember to put that portal back on, we can get rid of those checklists, no problem. It's no harm, no foul. And it's also not a big deal if you do want to turn it off, but you forget. I was driving across country this spring. I had my Atlas portal turned on, and I think I submitted about 6 checklists in Arkansas before I realized I was still in that North Carolina Atlas portal. So no big deal. Those will get thrown out at the end if you don't remember or if you don't want to be toggling back and forth. Yeah. Accepting checklists, oh, that people are sharing with you. If that's all that you use eBird for, it's probably not as important as the person who's submitting that checklist to be in the portal, because we're not going to double up on that information. That's going to get filtered out as well. So if that's all that you use eBird for, and you're always birding in groups and you're not the one keeping track of that checklist, I would say your job is to make sure the person keeping track of the checklist is in that portal. That's where I would put the volunteer onus on you. Yeah.
Martina Bertram was surveying for you. She's not now.
No, she had done the past 2 seasons. She is looking for other experiences this year.
You have how many people do you have going out the out of the way priority gloves?
So how many dedicated technicians do we have? Is that the question? So currently we have 4 technicians. We have 1 in the mountains, 1 in the Piedmont, which is myself, and 2 at the coast. And we are the sort of longer term technicians. We have, and then we have 2 folks in each region, ideally coming on for to help us kind of really concentrate during the breeding season when we need more hours. So we'll have ideally 6 more 3-month technicians coming on as well.
And how do they do that? They just make those?
So during the breeding season, we kind of will end up getting moved around as a pod a lot to kind of pull those resources. So we will make arrangements for housing. Part of the funding is to house those temporary technicians, either via, Airbnb, hotel room, camping, whatever accommodations are available in that region, and kind of move around and survey those areas in the convenient locations. And that'll kind of help us get to some of those more rural areas. It ends up being a little bit better on funding to move technicians around in groups rather than send them out and use all that gas every day. So we typically try to drive distances less than an hour. If our distance out and back, each way is more than an hour, we'll try to kind of clump those squares, those priority blocks, and do a 2 to 5 day concentrated effort in that region. All right, well, thank you guys very much.
Alicia, there's one more. I lost her. Okay.
Okay, remember, next month we have the photo exhibit, and I forgot to mention that after we have the exhibit here, the picture's going to be up for about a week at the Eastway Recreation Center in East Charlotte. So there'll be 3 opportunities to view the photographs at Wing Haven here and Eastway Recreation Center. It's good to see you all, and you have a nice trip home.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys for coming. Yeah. Well, I've worked with the commission before and I feel like, I have to so yeah, good background help. Otherwise I probably would have.